Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean DeBias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome Jeff Hoffman, a serial CEO who has been part of a number of successful startups that scaled from nothing into mainstream, like Priceline, for instance. He's morphed into a Renaissance man and continues to expand his platform beyond tech into an Emmy-winning film producer, Grammy-winning music producer, and author of a bestseller called Scale that hopefully we'll talk about. Jeff, you and I have taken companies public in various roles, CEO roles and others, and these days there's a lot of financing alternatives, everything from crowdfunding to the SPAC craze that's going on. So I thought we'd maybe start with that and kind of kick it off. So welcome to the program. Really appreciate you being on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today.
I was looking at Todd Goldberg and Darren Marble started this new series called Going Public. You are a mentor on. Jamie Schmidt was on the program 2 weeks ago, and as one of your co-mentors, she's loving filming down there in Miami. So maybe we thought we'd start with that, kind of then move into the democratization of fundraising, if you will. How is that show? What's it like?
Sure, and Jamie's fantastic. It's been really fun working with her.
Amazing. Yep.
And there's multiple goals when Todd and Darren decided to create this show. Part of it, which you just said we'll talk about, is democratizing investing, just meaning that a lot of deals, especially pre-IPO, deals that are in the scale-up stage, that are past a certain revenue amount, that are pretty proven model, that are thinking about going public, those deals are hard to access. They're not made available to everybody, and they usually have large minimum investments. Right. So that is a problem we are fixing, right? When you're using a Reg A plus, a crowdfunding platform, you don't have those giant minimum investments. So the little guy, the little investor can invest. But part of what we have to do on the show, Dean, a lot of those people have never invested before and don't know a lot about it. So that's Lauren Simmons, our host. Her role on the show is educating people about making good investing choices. So we're trying to provide that education. And then the role of people like myself and Jamie as mentors is for viewers to be able to see what it takes to scale a company. So if you're launching and growing a business, I can speak for my role, right? My job is to tell these companies, here are the things you have to get right if you're really going to scale and take your company big. So we think people have a chance to learn about that as well.
Yeah, the whole, as you know, both you and I have been master scalers over the last couple of decades. I hate to admit how long it's been, but it's an art form. I mean, every startup is different. You've got different industries doing different things, and there's no generic advice, I find. Interesting you bring up the question about investing and what she is doing to kind of educate people, because normally there's a box to check. Are you an accredited investor? It doesn't actually take much to be one. So I take it on this platform, they do not have to be. Is that right?
Well, no, they do, but it is a self-certification.
Self-certification, I like that.
Yep, that's the Reg A plus rule. As you click, it asks you the question, are you a qualified investor? If you don't know what it is, just click here and then click yes or no. If you click yes, you're done with that part of the process.
Got it.
So it does ask that. That is the Reg A plus rule, but it's not like they ask you to upload your tax returns or anything.
Yeah, just so are they targeting like the Reddit and Robinhood kind of fueled craze of GameStop? Are they kind of going after that audience or trying to broaden this out a little bit?
Yes, but that was the serendipity, honestly, because this show's been in the works for several years.
Good timing.
It just happened around the time that we went public with the announcement of our show going public. The universe said, "Hey, let me hand you a little something.
Let me give you the best PR you could ever have."
All that happened at the time we announced, and people said, "Wow, you guys jumped on this," not realizing Todd and Darren started this process of creating the show years ago. So yes, that's the audience, but we're also hoping to attract a broader audience in the sense that we're focusing on the founders, on underrepresented founders, which we hope will draw more attention to the business, right? The first company we picked is two minority females. One of the companies is the partners are two black males. So we're trying to get a little more focus on, we have two veterans in one of the companies. We're trying to draw in those underrepresented audiences of female founders, especially in tech, of minority, black and brown founders, of veterans, the audience that is not usually as included as they should be.
Yeah, that's actually that's good. Timing is good there as well. As you know, I'm one of the founding board members of 1871, one of the largest incubators in the world here in Chicago, about 500 startups at any given time. And we have been doing initiatives for female entrepreneurship under the Wisdom program, minorities, Hispanic. We were one of the first ones to bring Bunker into our facility, and it works very well in Chicago. And are these companies scattered all over the place, or are they geographic, or what are they?
No, they are most definitely scattered all over the place, all around the country. And that's also intentional because you're right. Ecosystems are not at the same level everywhere.
Right.
As you know, I was in Chicago when I was CEO of ubid.com.
Right.
So I was there in those early 1871 days and absolutely loving that resource was created right there in town. And spent a lot of time over time coming back. Howard asked me to come back every year to speak to entrepreneurs, so I was watching the growth. So having a resource like 1871 in any city, and my friend Donna Harris then created 1776 in DC.
Right.
By the way, yeah, she wouldn't have named it that if you guys hadn't named yours 1871.
I know. I think I sent her a "You're welcome" note at one point.
That's pretty funny, but
I love it. I mean, all tides rise, and what's been going on in
Yep.
Chicago, just so you know, 2021 here. I forgot what year it is. We've actually been rolling up other incubators and accelerators in Chicago, in Illinois, because it's just through the COVID times. It's been hard to sustain so many of them because there was, like any good startup craze, there was just, we went from like a couple in that city to dozens and dozens. So we've been kind of bringing them together into a bigger platform. So it's expanded. It's not just one location anymore, which is great.
So you guys, it's the role model, right? For many places. I also serve as the chairman of the Global Entrepreneurship Network, where our whole focus, we have chapters in 190 countries, but we have one single focus, which would be to do the best we can, pretty much at duplicating what you did there. We are trying to create ecosystems for entrepreneurs in every geography. That's what I do in that role. And so back to your original question, the startups on going public are geographically spread because we are, in fact, trying to represent entrepreneurs from a lot of different geographies and ecosystems.
Yeah, I like that. And I think Todd and Darren just got some more funding from some mostly LA type funders. It seems like it'd be simple to do. Seems like a small round, but are they funding any of these organizations? How's that going, or is that all through the crowd platform once you get started? Is there any seed money to get them to the show?
No, not from us, not from Crush Capital in the early days. Okay. And there's a reason for that. We just wanted to be independent in our guidance so that when you hear all of us working with these companies, we're not making decisions based on the fact that they have some of our money in their pocket. At the end, when it's all over, that might be a different story. But no, we are, for example, preparing them. Like I gave, a long talk on how to pitch investors. And even though these people have all raised money, that was kind of one of the things I did on the show, was a little workshop on refining your investor pitch and prepping them for doing that on the show. We've actually set them up with money with investors to pitch to, but it's not coming from the show.
Yeah. Investors beyond the crowdsourced ones.
Beyond the crowdfunding, yes.
So let's go back, talk about accelerators and incubators then, because in essence, that's what this is. It's just packaged up as a show, and active mentoring is so important. Actually, didn't you put an incubator on a ship at one point in your life? What, a ship
we
as
did.
in a cruise ship? What was that all about?
Yeah, we did. So what happened was, one of my mentees, an amazing young man named Daniel Epstein. Daniel had this idea. to build here's literally what we believe. The organization is called the Unreasonable Group. It is named after the George Bernard Shaw quote that reasonable people adapt to the world around them. Unreasonable people expect the world to adapt to them. Therefore, all progress is dependent upon the unreasonable. So Daniel had this idea for the Unreasonable Group, and I'm going to pretty much say it like this. Let's go find all the people crazy enough to think they can change the world and help them do it. So I was founding board member of Unreasonable, and I still am one of the main mentors. I teach, for example, branding and marketing to every single cohort. But Unreasonable is focused on the fundamental belief that entrepreneurs are the people most likely to solve the world's biggest problems. So we focus on what used to be called social entrepreneurship. I hated that word when it came out, but all these ventures are focused around, for example, the United Nations, 17 goals for the SDGs for a better world. So we had this idea that if you exposed today's entrepreneurs to the way the rest of the world really lives, to real problems, they would jump all over it and solve it. So that was the crazy idea. We called it Unreasonable at Sea. It was a research ship, basically, the MV Explorer, that we went on.
I thought it was a cruise ship. Okay.
It was a research ship. But it still had a pool and a gym and a basketball court,
pool,
but
man. Come on.
not cruise stuff. It had
a lot of metaphors there.
And we circumnavigated the planet Earth in this research ship. It took 101 days.
Wow.
And it had entrepreneurs on it. And the fifth deck of the ship was an incubator. It would look like any other office space that, at any other kind of incubator where startups are growing. And then on the ship, like my role, along with a bunch of others, was mentors. And we had people on there mentoring. And they sometimes got off in certain countries, flew home and were replaced by other mentors. But It was one of my favorite things I've ever done in my life, sailing around the world with entrepreneurs, looking at problems and solving them. And again, we called it Unreasonable at Sea.
So did you pop in and out, like when I was in Italy and nice countries, and kind of chopper in?
Yes, I did, because I had other things to do. Some people stayed on the ship the entire summer.
Wow.
Some people stayed on part. For me, I had to come on and off because I had other things that I had to do.
And I think a stat on that I read that 185 countries raised over $4 billion. How does that happen?
Yeah, so that is collectively for all. We have over 200 companies in the Unreasonable portfolio. We do have a funding organization, but it's not a traditional fund. It's a collective, right? So it's an invite-only group of investors around the world, literally including billionaires, people like that, that each time one of our portfolio companies need investing, we just go out to our collective and say, who wants a piece of this one? We don't make them put money up into a fund in advance, but our mentoring and our methodology that we do these in the cohorts, we do these brain trusts where we bring an army of people like you and I, Dean, to surround these companies and answer their questions and help them grow. So collectively, that 200 and something companies, they've generated more than $3.5 billion in revenues. Most of them are scale-ups now. They're growing businesses, and they have collectively raised it's close to $4.5 billion in funding for all these scale-ups now. They're just, keep in mind, to be fair, we spend the time to scour the planet and find the best entrepreneurs on the planet. So their odds of doing $100 million big rounds are high because we're picking the best ones to start with.
Yeah, you've de-risked the portfolio a little bit.
A lot, yes.
I kind of am sitting here wondering if we put 1871 on a cruise ship, how our perspectives would change. I would do a cruise ship, by the way, not a science. Kidding.
Call me. Don't forget to call me when you do that.
Well, hospitality industry, travel, they all need rebooting. So I just think it changes the perspective. I mean, to the point where many entrepreneurs around the world moved to Chicago to be in part of 1871, especially in the early days, because they didn't have supportive ecosystems in those cities that they were. One was, in Russia, for instance. Let's talk about, both you and I have done some interesting things in our lives. But when Priceline went public, it was the same week I was taking AutoWeb public. And I kept running into Jay Walker and you guys on the tarmacs of these, private airports and stuff when we were doing our road show, as you have to do or used to do for a proper road show. And so, I'm sure people would like to hear a little bit about, your journey with Jay at Priceline and kind of lessons learned.
Oh no, there were some great lessons learned, starting with Jay. I actually spent some part of time as a member working at Walker Digital, which is Jay's IP company as
Uh,
well. And it's out of Walker Digital that Jay and the team spent time studying industries and basically looking at innovations. How do we reboot and completely redesign an industry? And so I think Jay is like, seriously, Dean, I think he's the second or third most patented human being in human history.
it's brilliant. It's
That's what he
not your
creates.
typical scaling CEO, but just a brilliant
No,
guy.
because he's not. Back in the day, I remember a conversation Jay and I had one day that we decided we had three buckets of people: inventors, builders, and operators,
Hmm.
right? Jay's an inventor, comes up with brilliant IP and patents it. The reason in the early days, so Jay's the founder, but I was one of the people that in the early days got the call from Jay, let's gather a team of people because we need builders. And so
Yeah.
we had a team of people building companies out of IP. And then later there were operators, right? That's when people like Rick Braddock and Heidi Miller, people were brought in because it was a public company. And that's a different kind of person that runs a company for the next decade or two. I don't think that's either you or I want to do one company for decades long per se. So Jay's,
Hence the word serial CEO.
yeah,
Yes.
there you go. Jay's concepts, though, the internet was very seller driven. The buyer does all the work. I want to buy a pair of shoes. I got to go to every shoe website, find one I like, see if they have my size, see if they have the color, see if I like the price. Is it in stock? Is it too much? The buyer does all the work. And Jay's brilliant idea was buyer driven commerce. Let's harvest consumer demand and basically sell it to suppliers, right? I got a bunch of people that all have $100 and they all want a hotel room. Who wants to take care of them? That was the concept. And it was very much what led later when I was a CEO of another company we took public, which was ubid.com.
Yeah, here in
That was
Chicago.
this,
Yeah.
yep, that was the same business model, right? Let's aggregate demand for products and then we're able to move unsold inventory, right? Priceline was selling empty airline seats and empty hotel rooms, the name your own price part. That's what we were doing. So I learned a lot working there with him. And it was crazy times, Dean, because I was there from the very beginning. And when the company, started the tech work and really in 96, built it in 97, launched it in April of 98 and IPO'd in March of 99. So the company was 11 months old when the IPO happened. That's not reality anymore. That was that crazy, you were there, Dean, that was that crazy moment in internet time, but it's
Yeah.
a great high-speed learning platform.
And some companies like yours and AutoWeb, we went public with the least amount of capital raised before, whereas now people are raising hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes. People just kept coming to us with money. We're like, we actually don't need it. We're scaling quite well. We're going to go public. And
exactly the same. At Priceline did not raise a massive amount of money because it didn't need it.
You didn't need it. I mean, now you need it. There's so much more. It's interesting. I did a talk about this last night at Kellogg, but the price when we were running those companies in 90s through about 2000, whatever, it cost like $50 million to kind of build a good company. You had to build all the infrastructure and the freaking computer rooms and stuff. And, came down to about $5,000 for the last couple of companies I've been involved in, where you literally could just, it's like liquid plumbing. You just kind of
it is
play along.
Crazy how things have changed.
Yeah. Not to get too geeky, but well, let's stick with travel. I think United Airlines is going to be on the program sometime soon. Producers working on that. But if you look at what Priceline did and all the others that came in, so Priceline came, then you had the kayaks and the Trivagos of the world, actually just those two, which actually were consolidating everything, making it easier for people. And then you kind of AI came on the scene and things like Hopper came into play.
Yeah.
So Canadian company where it'll tell you exactly when to buy an airline ticket. And they've all struggled a bit with the pandemic and are probably poised to just take off. But that whole predictive analytics thing is not just like helping you find a place to stay. It's really helping you strategically buy at the right time, buy at the right price. It's amazing to see what's happened there. Does that kind of leave these online booking sites in a little bit of a lurch that they're not progressing with the technology capabilities?
Yes, I think you're hit that nail right on the head. If they don't evolve they're not going to have much to offer other than a transaction, right?
Right.
And or a database, access to the inventory. So they're not going to have much of a hold on the customer anymore, because you are correct, right? As we get to these, step one in AI is pattern recognition, which means being able to process a large amounts of data at high speed, right, in real time, recognize a pattern, then using that for predictive behavior, what's going to happen next, then making a recommendation. Exactly what you said. That's what AI does. And the companies that are creating that, and you and I have both seen a bunch of them that are not on anyone's radar yet, right? In stealth, they're creating new technology. And I am talking about in the travel industry that the big OTAs or online travel agencies are not aware of. So I think that there is danger for them if they do not evolve with this technology, and maybe they all are. But they had a pretty long run of not having to change much, because for years we were all just booking travel online and we just wanted to get in and out. But
As we say,
Yep.
you were milking it.
yep, now they're going to have to innovate pretty heavily, or they could lose a lot of that market share.
Yeah, I run this program called Dancing with Startups. We talk a lot about the program, but I was talking to like I guess there were 6 online. With Zoom, you never know. Public company CEOs last week through Kellogg, and about how you dance with startups and what you should be doing, what kind of programs you should be doing. And they said, yeah, we've got guys doing that. You taught us how to do scouting a long time ago. I'm like, it's all changed. The rules are all changed. Now you need to do what Jeff just said, sorry, which is, really digging down deeper into early stage, because the kernels of the technology and the AI and machine learning, there is so much there as a capability that large corporations never used to look at until they bubbled up to a good revenue number. Now it's like, no, you need to be partnering with. So we do a whole build, buy, borrow kind of matrix and try to figure out what are the ones you should be going after. And they're still a little slow on that. I mean,
They are a little slow on that because they
as much
don't
as
get
you
it.
try to help them.
Yep, I was doing years ago, it was TEDx Wall Street, where it was a TEDx talk live from the from the Florida Stock Exchange.
That was a good one, actually. Yes.
I put on on my talk, I said, you want to know the 3 most dangerous words in business? And I had a slide in giant letters that said, we're doing fine. Because
we tried that already.
Because that's what you're talking about. They look at their business, it's going well, so they get comfy, and innovation doesn't follow when things are going real well for them, and that's a dangerous place to be.
I take them through this interactive map. It's actually a boring Venn diagram that says you guys are big and you're fat and you're slow. And they're like, yeah, we are. We're a $10 billion company. I said, the connective tissue in between is irrelevance, obscurity, and decline. They're like, oh. And I show them all the companies that haven't gone there yet. They haven't gone there yet. No, they're on the verge. They're on the cusp of irrelevance. Maybe not decline. I said, do you know what's at the center of that Venn diagram? They're like, please don't tell us. And so it's the skull and bones. It's death. It's like you really have to. It's just to get them to act with a different sense of urgency, and act like companies like Logitech. CEOs got over 20 direct reports, breaks things down, and runs it like that. And they're a multi-billion-dollar company, so it can be done.
Yep, it can be done.
Speaking of scaling, let's forget about big companies for a while. You did a book called Scale: 7 Principles How to Grow Your Business and Not Go Insane, or something like that. my words. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I wrote that with a friend, my co-author, David Finkel. We both kept getting asked the same question. People kept saying, CEOs would say, I'm stuck. I had a certain period when I was starting my business that I had this accelerated growth, and I've hit a plateau. And they say this, I'm working harder than ever and more hours than ever, and yet my growth has stopped or really slowed down. What do I need to do? So the book was the attempt to answer that question. It's the 7 chapters cover the things you have to get right in order for your company to scale. And the benefit of, we put on the title, Scale Your Business and Get Your Life Back. Because the benefit is if you get these things right, for example, we dig deep into systems and processes, right? A lot of CEOs have
Most
a tendency.
books don't do that. That's good
right.
advice.
We got deep into that workbook style, right? Because a lot of companies and CEOs, they consider what they do every day, this is what we do every day.
Right.
And they don't stop and say, can I turn this into a process? Can I automate and or outsource the process? Can I bring in lower dollar value people because now it's been systematized and it doesn't need me to do it anymore. And that's not what happens. They're so busy doing what they've always done, and the company's cruising along, that they don't realize that in order to scale, they're going to have to find more efficiencies in these areas, and and less human involvement where it can. So that's an example of what we talk about in scale. Get these things right and your company will scale. If you don't, by the way, that's after scaling companies ourselves, David and I, and working with thousands of companies. So it's a pretty big sample size of what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of those examples in a minute. Challenges you've overcome. I want to ask you about I called you a bit of a Renaissance man. It's always a double-edged sword when you call someone that. Now you have to live up to that expectation. Like, going to parties and being a playboy or something is what it used to mean in the old days. But
that's true.
Beyond that, I mean, you did get into the music and the TV business. What has that taught you about business and scaling?
Oh, so I'll tell you, one of the reasons I went into entertainment and started production companies in both music and film was, it's a funny story, because you're probably one of the only people that have asked me that origin of that. I went to a movie. I got all excited. We talked about it all week. We went on opening night Friday night. We stood in a long line, and minutes into the movie, I realized how horrendously it sucked. By the way, it was the sequel to Silence of the Lambs. It was Hannibal. Which was a horrendously bad movie.
No, thank you.
And I was like, "What? Who did this to me?"
You should have called me. I would have told you.
I said, "How is Hollywood so good at marketing that I wasted my Friday night? I was excited. I waited outside in the line. It's good marketing." So I got into entertainment. You asked what it taught me in business, to learn how the marketing machine of the entertainment industry does what it does, and really emotion-based marketing.
It's amazing.
And so I learned a lot being in music and being in film and television, but I went in there with an actual goal, which was to become a better marketer.
Yeah, and the trailers that they do are targeted to different demographics and emotional feelings, and then you finally click on it. At least you don't have to go to the movie as much, and you're like, "What?
Yeah.
This isn't the same movie. I thought it was a love story."
By the way,
it's like knives coming out and blood.
Today, a lot of trailers actually are the whole movie. If you watch a 2.5-minute trailer, you don't need to go to the movie. They just told you everything that happens and how it ends.
Yeah, and given things like Quibi and Generation XYZ, that's all they need. They're like, "I already saw the movie." Like, no, you didn't. Gone with the Wind. You saw the trailer. It's a 3-hour movie. Oh God. So yeah, I mean, we've often talked about how music can teach people different things in businesses, especially jazz and things like that. So let's go into that final thing about, what are some of the biggest, you've had some fits and starts and successes and setbacks and, challenges you face that would help the aspiring entrepreneurs that are listening in.
Sure. I'll pick two of those. And by the way, the Grammy we won was for a jazz album we produced. We love jazz. So.
Oh, nice. And so many metaphors there, the riffing.
Yep. My friend that we did that album with, he wrote a book called Jazzocracy, and he talked about, that's what led us to the album. He talked about jazz's role through history. A side note. Anyway, I would say let's do two of those, two big challenges to overcome for entrepreneurs. The first one was credibility. And now I'm talking about you as the entrepreneur. When I first started, by the way, the first real one for me was the airport check-in kiosks. That was one of the first companies I built. Was back when you had to stand in line to check into a flight. We created these kiosks that are now still in airports that you could check yourself in at a kiosk. Here's the problem. I'm 20-something years old. I have zero track record. In fact, I've only really had one job ever. It was a corporate job, and I sucked at it and quit. So I am trying to get credibility as a young entrepreneur. And so that's a big challenge. And it doesn't matter whether you're young or old. I didn't mean young by age. I meant young by experience. I didn't have the entrepreneurial track record. If you're starting at 45 or 50, you still have the same problem. If you've had a regular job your whole life and now you're an entrepreneur. So as a new entrepreneur, there's no reason for anybody to believe in you. And I will tell you sort of the antidote to that. That was the first challenge to overcome. People were like, "How do I know you can do any of this stuff? What have you ever done?" Is I learned to turn the focus all onto results, to get some customer to just give me a little pilot, right? What you want is your work to speak for itself and your customers to speak for you, not you.
Right.
And when you get to the point where a small, one airline at one terminal, this is what really happened. A small airline put the product in, tried it, customers were loving it. So instead of when people came up and said to me again, Jeff, who are you? What have you ever done? I wouldn't even answer anymore. I would just flip on the video and it would be people in the airport saying, oh my God, this thing's amazing. Why aren't they everywhere? And it was the airline people saying how much money they saved. And then I just shrugged and said, you interested or not? So
Right.
credibility is the first one. And stop trying to sell yourself. Let customers, even with a prototype or a pilot, let your work speak for itself. And the other one that was kind of similar to that, though, is no, you know what? Let me do a different one because there's a lot of challenges that you asked. I would say the next biggest one for me was how do you convince talented people to come work for you as an entrepreneur when they have a good paying job at a corporation and you can't pay them the same? I faced that all the time. There were so many people I wanted. And they would say, I'd love to, man, but I got a good salary and we got a kid now and I don't want to go. And, the answer to that one was that salary is important, but when you lead a conversation, because this is what I did early, my mistake, Dean, I was like, hey, Jim, I'd love to hire you. I know I can't pay you what you're making now. I started the conversation with the apology and the discussion of salary. And salary is important. But what I evolved to was recognizing that salary is one variable in a quality of life equation. What makes people happy? Well, being broke doesn't usually, so salary is on the list, but it's only one thing. So I started asking people. The first thing I would say, not was, I'd love you to come work for me, but I can't afford you. The first thing I would say is, hey, tell me what matters to you. Tell me some of the things you're trying to do. Would you love to look back one day and have an impact? Look at the travel industry, for example, and say, we changed that industry. It looks different now because of us. Does impact matter? I asked them about, does sort of influence and control matter? Do you want to work at a company where one day at my big corporate job, Dean, I said to my boss, if I went home and didn't come back for 3 weeks, do you think anyone would even notice I was gone? How many weeks would it take before someone?
They'd take your chair is what they do.
Yeah, he's like, Hoffman, shut up and go back to work. But that I knew I was right. So do you want to be in an environment where everything you do every day matters, that you're literally designing the future of the company and you're right on the front line? Those are the questions I asked. And people said, yes, I want those things. And I said, do you have any of those now? And they would say, not really. And I'd say, well, I can give you all that plus equity, but there's a trade-off. I just can't pay you what you make now. But we'll get there if you help me make the company successful. So those were my two of the challenges.
Yeah, you're actually doing my lecture for tonight, which is, we do things for fun, money, and impact. So I tell them, hey, you want to get on the legacy train here? Hop aboard. So thanks for joining us, Jeff. You've been listening to Jeff. Been listening to Jeff Hoffman. He's going to be on the new show Going Public. Check it out this summer. It's going to be pretty cool. This is Dean Tobias with the Reboot Chronicles. Thanks for joining us. See you soon.